Blackwood Manor stood isolated at the edge of a dense forest, its Gothic architecture looming ominously against the darkening sky. Emily, a young journalist, arrived to investigate the mysterious disappearances that had plagued the manor for decades. Determined to uncover the truth, she parked her car and approached the grand, yet decaying front doors. As Emily stepped inside, the door creaked loudly, echoing through the vast, dimly lit hall. Dust motes danced in the air, disturbed by her presence. The air was cold and an unsettling silence enveloped her. She turned on her flashlight, illuminating the grand staircase and the darkened corners of the hall. Emily walked into the living room, where old furniture lay shrouded in white sheets. A large fireplace dominated one wall, with an ornate mirror hanging above it. She felt a chill as she noticed a faint figure reflected in the mirror. But when she turned, the room was empty. The only sound was the faint ticking of an old grandfather clock. Emily found a long hallway lined with portraits of the Blackwood family. The eyes of the painted figures seemed to follow her as she walked. One portrait, in particular, caught her attention. A stern-looking woman with piercing eyes. Suddenly, Emily felt a cold hand on her shoulder. But when she turned around, there was no one there. The library was filled with ancient books and heavy wooden furniture. Emily felt drawn to an old leather-bound journal on a desk. As she opened it, she found entries detailing strange rituals and dark secrets of the Blackwood family. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly, and the whispers of unseen figures filled the air. Emily discovered a hidden door leading to the basement. As she descended the creaking stairs, the air grew colder and the darkness thicker. Her flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the damp walls. She heard distant, echoing whispers and the faint sound of footsteps following her. At the bottom of the stairs, Emily found a room filled with strange symbols and an altar. The air was thick with the scent of incense and decay. She realized this was where the Blackwood family had conducted their dark rituals. As she explored, she heard a low, menacing chant and felt an oppressive presence closing in on her. Emily's flashlight died, plunging her into darkness. The chanting grew louder, and ghostly figures emerged from the shadows. She felt a cold hand grip her arm, pulling her towards the altar. Summoning her courage, she broke free and ran up the stairs, the spirit's wails echoing behind her. Emily burst out of Blackwood Manor, gasping for breath. The night was still and silent, a stark contrast to the horrors inside. Clutching the journal, she vowed to expose the truth about the Blackwood family. As she walked away, she glanced back one last time, seeing the faint outline of a figure watching her from an upstairs window.
On a dark, stormy night, 5 friends, Alice, Ben, Clara, David, and Eva, walk down a desolate street. They come across an old, dilapidated house at the end of the road. The house is known among locals as the last house on the street and is rumored to be haunted. Despite their fear, curiosity gets the better of them, and they decide to explore the house. The door creaks loudly as they push it open, revealing a dusty, abandoned interior. They enter the living room, which is filled with old furniture and a large, cracked mirror on the wall. Suddenly, the door slams shut behind them, and they hear faint whispering. The whispering leads them to a hidden door behind the stairs, which opens to a dark basement. Hesitant but determined, they descend the creaky steps, the air growing colder with each step. In the basement, they find an old chest. When they open it, they discover ancient cursed artifacts and a diary. The diary tells the story of a family that disappeared mysteriously, and it warns of a malevolent spirit trapped in the house. As they read the diary, the temperature drops, and a chilling presence fills the room. Shadows begin to move on their own, and the friends see a ghostly figure emerging from the darkness. Realizing they need to escape, they run back up the stairs. The house seems to come alive, with doors slamming and windows shattering. They finally break free and run out into the stormy night, vowing never to return. Back in the safety of their homes, they sit together, shaken but relieved. They know they will never forget the night they encountered the haunted house at the end of the street.
Emily, a young historian, inherits the infamous Blackwood mansion from her estranged great-uncle. Accompanied by her friends Jack and Lucy, she arrives on a stormy evening, the rain pouring down as they make their way through the overgrown driveway. The mansion looms before them, dark and foreboding. "Are you sure about this, Emily?" Jack asks, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. We need to know what he left behind, Emily replies, gripping the ancient key tightly. Inside, the mansion is a maze of dusty rooms and forgotten relics. The grand staircase is adorned with cobwebs, and the air smells of mildew and decay. They split up to explore, flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. This place is a historian's dream, Emily says, opening an old book. Lucy shivers. More like a nightmare. Jack finds a locked door in the basement. Hey, I think I found something. After breaking the lock, they enter a hidden room filled with strange artifacts and occult symbols. In the center, there's an altar with a dusty old book and a glowing amulet. This must be where he performed his rituals, Jack says, examining the symbols. Emily picks up the amulet. Look at this. It's beautiful. Lucy steps back uneasy. I don't like this place. We should leave. That night, they decide to stay in the mansion. As they settle in, strange things begin to happen. Doors creak and whispering voices echo through the halls. Emily is awakened by the sound of footsteps in her room. Who's there? She whispers, clutching the amulet. A shadowy figure moves in the corner, vanishing when she turns on the light. The next day, Emily and her friends delve into the old book they found. It reveals a dark history of the Blackwood family, including a curse that promises eternal torment to anyone who disturbs the amulet. This explains the strange occurrences, Emily says, her voice shaking. We need to put the amulet back. But where does it go? Jack asks. The book mentions a secret crypt beneath the mansion. They find the entrance to the crypt hidden beneath a trapdoor in the basement. The air is cold and damp as they descend the stone steps. The crypt is filled with ancient tombs and eerie statues. This place gives me the creeps, Lucy says, her voice echoing. Emily finds a pedestal with an indentation matching the amulet. This must be it. As she places the amulet on the pedestal, the ground shakes, and a ghostly figure appears, screaming in rage. That night, the mansion becomes a nightmare. Ghostly apparitions roam the halls and objects move on their own. The friends are terrorized by relentless hauntings. They gather in the living room, trying to come up with a plan. We need to banish the spirits, Emily says, holding the book of spells. Jack nods. Let's do it together. They begin the ritual, their voices shaky but determined. As they recite the banishment spell, the apparitions grow more aggressive. The temperature drops and a fierce wind blows through the mansion. The dark figure from before reappears, trying to stop them. Keep going! Emily shouts over the chaos. With a final shout, they complete the ritual. The figure screams and dissolves into mist. The wind dies down, and the mansion falls silent. We did it, Lucy whispers, tears of relief in her eyes. The next morning, the mansion feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone, and sunlight streams through the windows. The friends prepare to leave, feeling a sense of accomplishment. We should document everything, Emily says, looking back at the mansion one last time. Jack nods. Let's make sure no one else has to go through this. They lock the doors and drive away, leaving Blackwood Mansion and its dark history behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Emily finds the old amulet on her bedside table, even though she left it in the crypt. Her heart races as she picks it up, and the room grows cold. A whispering voice fills the room. You cannot escape the curse. Emily turns to see the dark figure standing behind her, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness. In an old, dusty attic, Emily found a large, ornate mirror covered with a white cloth. Curious, she pulled off the cloth, revealing a beautifully carved frame and a mirror that looked untouched by time. Her friend Jack warned her not to touch it, but Emily couldn't resist. As Emily gazed into the mirror, her reflection seemed to flicker. For a moment, she saw a shadowy figure standing behind her. She turned around quickly, but no one was there. Jack saw nothing and told her it was just her imagination. That night, Emily had a terrible nightmare. She dreamt of being trapped in the mirror, unable to escape. Shadowy figures surrounded her, whispering her name. She woke up in a cold sweat, the image of the figures lingering in her mind. The next day, strange things started happening. Objects moved on their own, and Emily felt a constant cold presence. Jack suggested they move the mirror back to the attic, but Emily felt an odd attachment to it and refused. Emily's grandmother visited and immediately recognized the mirror. She warned Emily about the curse, explaining that the mirror traps souls and that they must destroy it before it's too late. Emily was skeptical, but agreed to consider it. That evening, Emily started acting strange. Her eyes glazed over, and she spoke in a voice that wasn't her own. Jack realized the mirror was possessing her and tried to snap her out of it, but she attacked him, screaming that they mustn't destroy the mirror. Jack and Emily's grandmother decided to destroy the mirror. They grabbed a hammer and approached it cautiously. The mirror's surface rippled, and shadowy hands reached out, trying to stop them. With a desperate swing, Jack shattered the mirror. As the mirror shattered, a wail echoed through the room, and the shadowy figures dissolved into smoke. Emily collapsed, unconscious but unharmed. The room felt lighter, and the cold presence was gone. Emily woke up, confused but relieved. In the days that followed, Emily recovered and felt grateful to Jack and her grandmother. They disposed of the mirror's remains and made sure to never speak of it again. The house felt peaceful once more. Emily redecorated her room, replacing the mirror with a beautiful painting. Life returned to normal, and the haunting memories faded away. They knew they'd faced something dark, but their bond was stronger than ever. On a foggy night, 4 friends, Jack, Mia, Ethan, and Sophie, arrived at Blackwood Manor. The old abandoned mansion was said to be cursed. They had come to investigate the legend. They pushed it open the heavy front door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the air was cold and stale. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs hung in the corners. The living room was filled with old furniture covered in white sheets. An antique chandelier hung from the ceiling, and a grand piano stood in the corner. Suddenly, the piano played a single, eerie note, causing everyone to jump. They moved to the library, where shelves of dusty books lined the walls. Jack picked up an old book, and as he opened it, a cold breeze swept through the room, making the candles flicker. They entered a long hallway filled with old portraits. The eyes of the portraits seemed to follow them as they walked. Mia shivered, feeling a chill run down her spine. At the end of the hallway, they found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to go down. The wooden stairs creaked under their weight, and the air grew colder with each step. The basement was cold and damp. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls. In the corner, they saw a ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. She reached out to them, and they felt an icy chill. Terrified, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return. Back at their homes, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and decided never to speak of it again. Lily received a mysterious letter inviting her to an old mansion that once belonged to her ancestors. She had always been curious about her family's past and decided to visit. The mansion was isolated, surrounded by overgrown trees and an eerie silence. As she walked towards the door, the sky turned gray and the wind began to howl. Lily pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and dusty, with cobwebs hanging from the corners. An old chandelier hung precariously from the ceiling, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. The door slammed shut behind her, making her jump. Lily stepped into the grand hall, where portraits of stern-looking ancestors lined the walls. Their eyes seemed to follow her as she moved. She felt a chill run down her spine as she heard faint whispering. The room was dimly lit by the light filtering through the grimy windows. Lily found herself in the mansion's library, filled with dusty books and old furniture. An old leather-bound book lay open on a desk. As she approached, she saw it was a diary detailing strange rituals and mysterious disappearances. The air grew colder, and she felt an unseen presence watching her. Lily discovered a secret door behind a bookshelf. She hesitated but then pushed it open, revealing a dark, narrow staircase leading down. The air was damp and cold. With her flashlight in hand, she began to descend, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the silence. The basement was even colder, with strange symbols painted on the walls and an old wooden table in the center. On the table were ancient artifacts and melted candles. Lily felt an overwhelming sense of dread. She heard whispers growing louder, almost as if they were coming from the walls themselves. Lily's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. Panic set in as the whispers turned into screams. She fumbled to turn the flashlight back on. When she did, she saw a ghostly figure standing by the table, staring at her with hollow eyes. She backed away in terror. Desperate to escape, Lily turned and ran up the stairs. The house seemed to come alive, with doors slamming and shadows moving around her. She reached the front door, threw it open, and ran into the stormy night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop until she reached her car. Breathing heavily, Lily glanced back at the mansion as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, vowing never to return.
Emma and her husband John move into an old house named Willow House in a small town. The house is large and charming but has been vacant for decades. As they unpack, Emma finds a strange old locket in the attic. She decides to keep it, thinking it's a piece of history. That night, Emma wakes up to soft whispering and faint footsteps. She dismisses it as the house settling. However, when she looks out the window, she sees a shadowy figure standing in the garden, staring up at her. She turns to wake John, but the figure is gone when she looks back. The next day, Emma explores the house and hears whispers in the hallway. She follows the sound to a locked door. Determined to find out what's behind it, she searches for the key but can't find it. The whispers continue, growing louder each time she passes the hallway. Emma decides to examine the locket more closely. She finds a hidden compartment inside it, containing a small, faded photograph of a young woman and a child. On the back, there's a note that reads, "Find me." Emma is now convinced that the locket is connected to the whispers. That night, Emma hears the whispers again and follows them to the locked door. To her surprise, the door is now ajar. She enters and finds a hidden room filled with old toys and a large, cracked mirror. In the mirror, she sees the young woman from the photograph standing behind her. Emma learns from the ghost that her name is Lily, and she was separated from her child years ago. Lily's spirit has been trapped in the house, searching for her lost child. Emma promises to help Lily find peace. Emma researches the house's history and discovers that Lily's child was taken to an orphanage nearby. She finds records showing that the child, named Sarah, was adopted but never knew about Lily. Emma tracks down Sarah, now an elderly woman, and brings her to the house. Emma brings Sarah to the hidden room. As soon as they enter, Lily's spirit appears. Sarah recognizes her mother, and they share a tearful reunion. Lily's spirit finally finds peace and begins to fade away, smiling at Emma gratefully. With Lily's spirit at peace, the house feels lighter. The strange occurrences stop, and Emma and John feel a sense of calm in their home. Emma keeps the locket as a reminder of Lily's story and the bond they formed. Months later, Emma and John enjoy their now peaceful home. They often think about Lily and Sarah and the extraordinary experience they shared. The house is no longer haunted, but the memories of the past live on.
In the heart of Hollow Creek, an abandoned house sits atop a hill, its windows shattered and its doors hanging off their hinges. The locals whisper tales of a family who disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only the echoes of their screams. But when a group of teenagers decides to spend the night in the house, they quickly realize that the rumors were just the beginning of the horrors that await them. As the group of teenagers gathers outside the house, they dare each other to spend the night inside, eager to prove their bravery. With nervous laughter and shaky hands, they push open the creaking door and step inside, their hearts pounding in their chests. Little do they know they're about to come face to face with the horrors that lie within. As the teenagers explore the house, they feel an oppressive presence weighing down on them, a sense of malevolence that seems to seep from the very walls. They hear whispers in the darkness and catch fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures out of the corners of their eyes. Fear grips them tight as they realize they're not alone in the house. As the night wears on, the teenagers uncover clues about the house's dark past. A family torn apart by tragedy, their spirits trapped within the walls for eternity. They find old photographs and newspaper clippings, piecing together the story of the family's demise. But as they delve deeper, they awaken something sinister that has been lying dormant for years. As the night progresses, the house comes alive with paranormal activity. Doors slam shut on their own, objects move of their own accord, and ghostly apparitions appear in the darkness. The teenagers huddle together, their screams echoing through the empty halls as they realize they're trapped in a nightmare from which there's no escape. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the teenagers make a final stand against the evil that haunts the house. Armed with makeshift weapons and fierce determination, they confront the ghostly apparitions that roam the halls, knowing that their survival depends on their ability to banish the darkness that lurks within. As dawn breaks, the paranormal activity subsides, and the house falls silent once more. The teenagers emerge from that darkness, battered and bruised but alive. They exchange weary smiles, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the scars of their ordeal will never fully heal, they take solace in the knowledge that they've conquered the darkness that once threatened to consume them.
Emma, a young writer in her late 20s, inherits Blackwood Manor from her estranged grandmother. The manor is located on the outskirts of a small town, surrounded by dense, dark woods. Emma decides to move in, hoping the isolation will inspire her writing. As she arrives, she feels an eerie chill. The mansion, with its tall spires and ivy-covered walls, seems to loom over her ominously. Despite her unease, Emma is determined to make this her new home. On her first night, Emma struggles to sleep. The house is filled with strange noises, the creaking of floorboards, the whisper of the wind through cracks in the windows, and distant, indistinct whispers. She hears what sounds like footsteps outside her bedroom door, but when she checks, no one is there. She returns to bed, her mind racing with unease and exhaustion. The next day, while exploring the house, Emma discovers a locked door in the attic. Curious, she searches the house and finds an old rusty key hidden in a drawer. She uses the key to unlock the door and finds a small room filled with old furniture, cobwebs, and a large ornate mirror covered with a cloth. Emma removes the cloth from the mirror and, to her shock, sees the reflection of a young girl standing behind her. When she turns around, no one is there. The mirror begins to show disturbing images of past events in the house, including a girl being trapped and crying for help. Emma feels a chill run down her spine. Determined to find out more, Emma searches the house and finds an old diary hidden behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The diary belonged to her grandmother and details a tragic story of a girl named Lily who lived in the house and mysteriously disappeared. Emma realizes the ghost she saw is Lily, trapped in the mirror. Emma decides to perform a seance to communicate with Lily's spirit. She sets up candles and chants words from the diary. The room grows cold, and Lily's ghost appears, revealing that she was trapped by a dark ritual performed by Emma's grandmother. Lily begs Emma to free her. Following Lily's instructions, Emma gathers the items needed to break the ritual: a locket, a piece of Lily's clothing, and a special incantation. As she performs the ritual, the house shakes violently, and a dark, malevolent spirit tries to stop her. Emma persists, chanting the incantation louder and louder. The dark spirit attacks, but Emma continues the ritual, calling out to Lily for strength. A bright light fills the room, and the dark spirit screams before dissipating into nothingness. Lily's spirit smiles gratefully at Emma before ascending into the light, finally freed. With the haunting over, the house feels lighter and more welcoming. Emma finishes her novel, inspired by Lily's story. She decides to keep Blackwood Manor and transform it into a place of peace and creativity. Sitting on the porch, she feels a deep connection to the house and its history, ready for a new beginning. Michael, a man in his late 30s, receives a surprising letter. His great-uncle, whom he barely knew, has passed away, leaving him an old manor in the remote countryside. Intrigued and financially struggling, Michael decides to visit the manor with his wife, Sarah, and their teenage daughter, Emily. Michael reads the letter aloud. It says we have inherited an estate. Sarah looks at him skeptically. Are you sure this is a good idea? Michael nods. We could use a fresh start. Besides, what harm could it do? Emily, always up for an adventure, adds, It sounds exciting. Let's go. The family arrives at the manor in the late afternoon. The mansion is grand but clearly neglected, surrounded by overgrown gardens and tall, dense trees. The sky is overcast, casting a gloomy shadow over the scene. Emily shivers. This place gives me the creeps. Michael tries to be optimistic. It's just old. We can fix it up. Sarah clutches Emily's hand. Let's stay close and see what's inside. Inside, The manor is filled with dust, cobwebs, and a musty smell. The furniture is covered with white sheets. As they explore, Emily finds an old, ornate mirror in one of the rooms. Unlike the rest of the house, the mirror's surface is strangely clean. "Look at this mirror," Emily calls out. Sarah touches the frame. "It's beautiful, but it feels out of place." Michael frowns. "Why is it so clean?" That night, the family tries to settle in. Michael and Sarah fall asleep quickly, but Emily struggles. Around midnight, she hears faint whispers and feels a cold breeze. The mirror in her room begins to fog up, revealing words written from the inside. "Help us," it reads. Terrified, Emily runs to her parents' room. "Mom, Dad, there's something in the mirror." Michael, groggy, tries to comfort her. "It's just your imagination, Emily. Go back to sleep." The next day, the family visits the local library to learn more about the manor. They discover that it was owned by Michael's great-uncle, a reclusive man with a dark interest in the occult. Sarah reads from an old newspaper. "Local recluse found dead under mysterious circumstances. Manor believed to be haunted." Michael sighs. "This explains a lot. We need to be careful." Emily, still shaken, adds, "What if the spirits are still here?" Back at the manor, Michael discovers a hidden door in the basement. Inside, they find an old study filled with books on the occult, strange artifacts, and a large locked chest. Sarah examines a book. "He was into dark stuff. This can't be good." Michael tries to open the chest, but fails. "We need to find the key. There might be answers inside." Emily points to a strange symbol on the wall. "I've seen this symbol before, in my room." That night, the hauntings escalate. Objects move on their own, and ghostly apparitions appear. Emily is dragged out of bed by an unseen force, and Sarah sees a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway, watching them. "We have to leave now," Sarah screams, but the doors are locked and won't open. Michael grabs an old book from the study. This book has instructions to banish the spirits. We need to perform the ritual. Desperate, the family gathers in the basement to perform the ritual. They light candles and arrange the symbols in a circle. Michael reads the incantation aloud, while Sarah and Emily hold hands, trembling. As the ritual progresses, the house shakes, and the spirits grow more agitated. A blinding light fills the room, and the spirits are drawn into the circle, screaming. "Keep going, Michael!" Sarah yells over the noise. With a final shout, Michael completes the incantation, and the spirits vanish. The house falls silent. The next morning, the manor feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone, and sunlight streams through the windows. The family packs up their belongings, relieved that the ordeal is over. "We should tell someone about this place," Sarah says, looking back at the manor. Michael nods. "Let's make sure no one else has to go through this." They drive away, leaving the manor behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Emily finds the old mirror in her room, even though they left it at the manor. Her heart races as she sees words slowly appear on the surface. "We are not done," it reads. Emily turns to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness. Sophie arrived at Briarwood Manor, a sprawling estate she inherited from her great-uncle. The mansion stood alone on a hill, surrounded by gnarled trees and thick fog. As she approached, the gate creaked open on its own, setting her nerves on edge. She hesitated but walked through, determined to uncover the secrets of her inheritance. Sophie stepped inside the manor, greeted by a grand but dusty foyer. The air was heavy with the scent of decay. As she moved further in, the front door slammed shut behind her with a loud bang. Startled, she spun around, but no one was there. The only light came from her flickering flashlight. In the living room, old furniture was covered in white sheets. An antique clock ticked loudly, breaking the silence. Sophie noticed a photograph on the mantelpiece, showing her great-uncle with an unknown woman. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned quickly, but the room was empty. Sophie walked down a hallway lined with portraits of her ancestors. Their eyes seemed to follow her every move. She felt a chill as she passed by a particularly stern-looking man. As she continued, she heard a whisper, almost as if someone was calling her name. She froze, heart pounding. In the library, Sophie found shelves filled with dusty old books. One book in particular caught her eye, an old journal. As she read through it, she discovered it belonged to her great-uncle, detailing strange events and encounters with a dark presence. The room grew colder, and she felt like she was being watched. Behind a bookshelf, Sophie discovered a hidden door. She hesitated but felt compelled to open it. The door revealed a dark, narrow staircase leading down. Holding her flashlight, she descended, each step echoing in the silence. The air grew damp and cold. The basement was filled with old furniture and strange symbols painted on the walls. In the center stood an altar with black candles and an old book. As Sophie approached, the candles flickered to life, casting an eerie glow. She felt an overwhelming sense of dread as she heard distant whispers. Sophie's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand on her shoulder. She spun around to see a ghostly figure of the unknown woman from the photograph, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Help me," the figure whispered. Terrified, Sophie ran up the stairs, the house seeming to come alive with shadows moving and doors slamming. She burst through the front door into the foggy night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop running until she reached her car. She looked back once more, vowing never to return. Breathing heavily, Sophie glanced back at the manor as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure of the unknown woman watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, never looking back.
At the edge of town lies the entrance to the Whispering Woods, a place shrouded in mystery and whispered tales of the supernatural. The path winds its way into the heart of the forest, disappearing into the dense mist that clings to the trees like a shroud. Deep within the woods, a group of friends has set up camp for the night, seeking adventure in the unknown depths of the forest. A small campfire crackles and hisses, casting flickering shadows that seem to dance in time with the whispers that echo through the trees. In a moonlit clearing, the dense canopy of trees creates an oppressive atmosphere, suffocating the sounds of the night. Moss-covered ground crunches beneath the feet of the campers as they venture deeper into the heart of the woods, a sense of foreboding settling over them like a suffocating blanket. Suddenly, the group stumbles upon an old abandoned cabin nestled among the trees. Its windows are shattered, and the door hangs off its hinges, swinging ominously in the breeze. Moonlight filters through the cracks in the walls, casting eerie shadows that seem to dance and sway with a life of their own. Inside the cabin, the main room is a scene of decay and neglect. Decaying furniture sits shrouded in cobwebs, and dust hangs thick in the air like a tangible presence. The only sound is the creaking of floorboards beneath their feet and the distant whispers that seem to emanate from the very walls themselves. In the bedroom, a tattered mattress lies abandoned amidst peeling wallpaper and crumbling plaster. Moonlight filters weakly through a cracked window, casting eerie shadows that seem to writhe and twist upon the walls like living things. Descending into the basement, the air grows thick with the scent of decay and mold. Rusted chains hang ominously from the ceiling, their purpose long forgotten. The sound of dripping water echoes through the darkness, a constant reminder of the relentless passage of time. In the attic, cobwebs cling like shrouds to forgotten relics of a bygone era. Dusty trunks sit amidst a clutter of long-forgotten possessions, their secrets buried beneath layers of neglect. Moonlight filters through a broken skylight, casting an ethereal glow upon the abandoned treasures that lie hidden in the shadows. Venturing deeper into the heart of the woods, the trees close in around them like silent sentinels, their twisted branches reaching up towards the sky like gnarled fingers. Moonlight struggles to penetrate the thick canopy, casting eerie shadows that seem to dance and sway with a life of their own. As dawn breaks, the first light of morning filters through the trees, casting a golden glow over the clearing. The campfire smolders, its flames reduced to embers, and the forest is bathed in an eerie silence that seems to linger long after the night has passed. Blackwood Manor had always been a place of dark legends in the town of Ravenwood. On a foggy evening, Jack, a determined historian, arrived to uncover the truth about the mysterious disappearances linked to the mansion. He parked his car at the entrance, feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. The fog rolled in thick waves, almost swallowing the mansion whole. Jack pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. Inside, the mansion was dark and cold. Dust covered every surface and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. He turned on his flashlight, revealing a grand but neglected foyer. His footsteps echoed ominously as he walked down the main hallway, the air thick with a sense of abandonment. As Jack explored, he felt a sudden chill. He turned and saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving him questioning his sanity. Determined, he continued to the library, where he hoped to find records about the mansion's dark past. In the library, Jack found rows of old, dusty books. As he searched through them, he heard whispers and the sound of pages turning on their own. He discovered an old diary belonging to the mansion's original owner, Thomas Blackwood. The entry spoke of dark rituals and a curse placed on the house. Jack's exploration led him to a room filled with mirrors. As he walked through, his reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following him with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular drew his attention. In it, he saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. He reached out, but the image disappeared. Jack discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. He descended the creaky stairs into a dark basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old dusty books on a table. He found a journal detailing dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by its original owner, Thomas Blackwood. As Jack read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Thomas Blackwood appeared, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at Jack and screamed, "You should not have come here." The walls shook, and the air filled with a chilling wind. Jack knew he had to leave immediately. Jack bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind him. He raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on him. He burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but he could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on him. Back in his apartment, Jack reviewed the photos and notes he had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. He wrote his article revealing the dark history of Blackwood Manor. As he finished, he felt a cold draft and heard Thomas's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." He knew the haunting was far from over.
As dusk settles over the sleepy town, a car pulls up to the edge of Willow Lake, its waters shrouded in mist. Inside are four friends, Emma, Jake, Lily, and Max, seeking a weekend getaway at a lakeside cabin. The air is cool and still, and the only sound is the gentle lapping of water against the shore. The friends arrive at the lakeside cabin, a rustic wooden structure perched on the edge of the water. The moonlight reflects off the lake's surface, casting a shimmering path to the cabin's door. Excitement fills the air as they unload their belongings, eager to relax and unwind in the secluded setting. As night falls, the friends gather around a crackling fire outside the cabin, sharing stories and laughter. But as the hour grows late, a chill wind sweeps in from the lake, and a sense of unease settles over the group. Shadows dance among the trees, and the distant sound of a loon's call sends shivers down their spines. Suddenly, a thick fog rolls in from the lake, engulfing the cabin in a blanket of white. Visibility drops to almost nothing, and the friends find themselves disoriented and afraid. Strange shapes loom in the mist, and the sound of footsteps echoes through the fog. As the fog thickens, the friends begin to hear faint whispers that seem to emanate from the darkness itself. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an eerie chorus. The friends exchange nervous glances, their hearts pounding in their chests as they try to make sense of the haunting sounds. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize in the fog, a spectral procession of ethereal beings with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. Their ghostly forms glide through the mist, their movements graceful yet haunting. The friends watch in horror as the spirits draw closer, their presence filling the night with dread. With a collective cry, the friends turn and flee from the cabin, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the thick fog, branches clawing at their skin and roots tripping them up. Behind them, the ghostly spirits follow, their wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the fog, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the shore of Willow Lake, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. As the first light of dawn breaks through the mist, they share a solemn vow never to return to the haunted cabin by the lake.
It was a gloomy autumn afternoon when Emma, Liam, and Sarah arrived at Hollow Hill. The old mansion, inherited by Emma from a distant relative, stood isolated atop a hill surrounded by thick leafless trees. The wind howled, and the sky was an ominous gray. "This place is huge," Liam said, looking up at the towering structure. "And creepy." Emma nodded, clutching the old rusted key. "Let's get inside before it gets dark." They pushed open the creaky door and stepped into a grand, dusty foyer. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and shadows danced in the corners. The interior of the mansion was just as foreboding. Cobwebs draped the chandeliers, and the floorboards creaked under their weight. As they explored, they found rooms filled with antique furniture, old portraits, and thick layers of dust. "Look at this," Sarah said, pointing to a large, dusty portrait of a stern-looking man. "He must be one of your ancestors, Emma." Emma shivered. "Let's keep looking." In the library, they discovered a collection of ancient books. One particularly old book caught Emma's eye. It was bound in dark leather with a strange symbol on the cover. "This looks interesting," Emma said, opening it carefully. That night, they settled into their rooms. The mansion was eerily silent, with only the sound of the wind outside. As Emma lay in bed, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Suddenly, she heard whispers. Sitting up, she saw a shadow move across the room. "Who's there?" she called out. But there was no response. Terrified, she ran to Liam's room. "Liam, I saw something." Liam rubbed his eyes. "It was probably just your imagination. This place is spooky." But Emma knew what she saw. Something was not right in Hollow Hill. The next day, Emma and her friends decided to investigate the history of the mansion. In the library, they found an old journal belonging to the man in the portrait, Sir Edward Holloway. "Listen to this," Emma said, reading aloud. "He writes about strange rituals and dark magic." Sarah's eyes widened. That explains the creepy vibes. As they continued reading, they discovered that Sir Edward had conducted forbidden experiments, trying to unlock the secrets of immortality. Many people had gone missing in the area during his time. "This is bad," Liam said. "We need to be careful." While exploring the basement, they stumbled upon a hidden door behind a stack of old crates. Inside, they found a secret laboratory filled with strange equipment and jars containing bizarre specimens. "This must be where Sir Edward conducted his experiments," Liam said, examining the equipment. On a table, they found an old diary. As Emma read it, she discovered detailed accounts of the rituals and experiments Sir Edward had performed. "He was trying to summon something," Emma said, her voice trembling. "Something evil." Suddenly, the air grew cold, and they heard a low, guttural growl. That night, the mansion came alive with supernatural activity. Doors slammed shut, lights flickered, and ghostly figures appeared in the hallways. Emma, Liam, and Sarah huddled together, terrified. "We need to get out of here," Sarah said, her voice shaking. But as they tried to leave, the front door wouldn't budge. It was as if the house itself was trapping them inside. "There's no way out," Liam said, panic in his voice. Emma remembered the book she found in the library. "There must be a way to stop this. We need to find the ritual to banish whatever he summoned." Back in the library, Emma frantically searched through the book for the banishment ritual. The ghostly figures grew more aggressive, knocking over furniture and whispering threats. "Here it is," Emma shouted, finding the ritual. As she began to recite the incantation, the room grew colder. A dark, shadowy figure appeared, towering over them. "You cannot banish me," the figure hissed. "This house is mine." Emma's voice wavered, but she continued the ritual. The shadow screamed in rage, its form flickering and destabilizing. "Keep going, Emma," Liam urged. The shadowy figure lunged at them, but a bright light emanated from the book, pushing it back. Emma continued the incantation, her voice gaining strength. "You will not win," the shadow roared, but it was growing weaker. With a final burst of energy, Emma completed the ritual. The shadows screamed one last time before disintegrating into a cloud of dark mist. The mansion shook violently, then fell silent. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the ghostly figures vanished. "We did it," Sarah said, tears of relief in her eyes. But Emma knew it wasn't over. The house had secrets yet to reveal. In the days that followed, the mansion remained quiet. Emma and her friends cleaned up and prepared to leave. But as they packed, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. "We should go," Liam said. "This place is too dangerous." Emma nodded. "Let's leave this nightmare behind." They locked the mansion and drove away, vowing never to return. But as they looked back, they saw a figure in the window watching them leave. "Did you see that?" Sarah whispered. "Just keep driving," Emma said, gripping the wheel tightly. "We're never coming back." Back in their hometown, life slowly returned to normal. But Emma couldn't forget what happened. One night she found the old book on her bedside table, even though she had left it at the mansion. Her heart raced as she opened it. The pages had changed, now filled with new, ominous entries. "Welcome back," a voice whispered behind her. Emma spun around to see the shadowy figure from the mansion, its eyes glowing with malevolence. "You can never escape Hollow Hill," it said, reaching out for her. Emma screamed, the room plunging into darkness.
Emily, Jake, and Sarah arrived at Blackwood Manor, an ancient, crumbling estate shrouded in mist. The manor had been abandoned for decades, and stories of its haunting were legendary. They were there to document the paranormal activity for their online show. "This place is seriously creepy," Sarah said, shivering as she stepped out of the car. "That's the point," Jake replied, setting up his camera. "The spookier, the better." Emily led the way up the overgrown path to the front door, her excitement mixed with unease. "Let's get inside and start setting up." Inside the manor, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. The grand hall was filled with old furniture, draped in white sheets. As they explored, they found evidence of the past: old portraits, tattered books, and broken artifacts. "Look at this," Sarah said, picking up an old locket. "It must have belonged to someone important." Jake filmed everything, capturing the unsettling atmosphere. "This is going to be great footage." Emily found an old diary on a dusty table. "This might tell us what happened here." Emily read aloud from the diary, which detailed the tragic story of the Blackwood family. They had practiced dark rituals, summoning spirits that ultimately led to their downfall. The diary ended abruptly, hinting at a terrible event. "This is so creepy," Sarah said, looking around nervously. "We need to document everything," Jake insisted. "This is gold." As Emily closed the diary, a sudden chill filled the room. The lights flickered, and they heard a distant whisper. "Did you hear that?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. A shadow moved across the hall, catching their attention. They followed it to a room at the end of the corridor. Inside, the temperature dropped dramatically, and they saw a figure standing by the window. "Who's there?" Jake called out, but there was no response. The figure turned slowly, revealing a face twisted with pain and anger. It lunged at them, and they ran, slamming the door behind them. "We need to get out of here," Sarah screamed. "Not yet," Emily said, her fear giving way to determination. "We have to finish what we started." Emily found instructions for a banishment ritual in the diary. They gathered candles, chalk, and other items needed for the ritual. The air was thick with tension as they worked quickly, knowing the spirit could return at any moment. "Are you sure this will work?" Jake asked, lighting the candles. "It has to," Emily replied, drawing a circle on the floor. "We don't have any other choice." Sarah stood guard, her eyes darting around the room. "Hurry up. I don't want to be here any longer than we have to." As they began the ritual, the spirit returned, more furious than before. It howled and thrashed against the invisible barrier created by the circle. Emily chanted the incantation from the diary, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Keep it away from us," Sarah yelled, clutching a candle. "We're almost there," Emily shouted back, her focus unwavering. The spirit's form began to waver and dissolve as the ritual reached its climax. With one final desperate scream, it vanished into thin air. The friends collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The oppressive atmosphere lifted. replaced by a peaceful silence. "We did it," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's get out of here," Sarah urged, her eyes still wide with fear. They gathered their things and left the manor, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. As they walked away from Blackwood Manor, they felt a sense of triumph and relief. "Let's never do this again," Jake said, managing a weak smile. As they walked away from the manor, the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the forest. The manor behind them was now just a distant memory, a place they would never forget but never return to. "Let's make a pact," Emily said, stopping to look at her friends. "We never speak of this again." "Agreed," Jake and Sarah said in unison. They walked on, the past behind them and the future ahead, grateful to have survived the haunting of Blackwood Manor. Sarah and her husband, David, arrive at Silverwood Manor, an old estate they inherited from Sarah's distant relative. The house is imposing, with tall windows and ivy-covered walls. As they unpack, Sarah finds an old, dusty music box in the attic. Intrigued, she decides to keep it. That night, Sarah is awakened by the soft melody of the music box playing on its own. She also hears faint whispers and footsteps. Frightened, she wakes David, but the sounds stop as soon as he is awake. They both dismiss it as the house settling. The next day, Sarah and David find an old journal hidden in a secret compartment of the music box. It belonged to a girl named Eliza who lived in the house a century ago. The journal entries describe Eliza's fear of a dark presence in the house. That night, the whispers and footsteps return, louder and more menacing. Sarah sees a shadowy figure at the foot of her bed. The figure reaches out to her, and she screams, waking David. The figure vanishes, but the air remains cold and heavy. Desperate for answers, Sarah and David contact a local historian. The historian tells them about Eliza's tragic story. She was believed to have been haunted by a malevolent spirit and disappeared mysteriously. Her body was never found. Following the historian's advice, Sarah and David search the basement and find a hidden door behind some old crates. Inside, they discover a small room with old furniture and a large cracked mirror. The room is freezing, and they feel a strong, oppressive presence. Sarah looks into the mirror and sees Eliza's ghost. Eliza silently pleads for help, showing Sarah visions of her past and how the malevolent spirit trapped her in the hidden room. Eliza points to a spot on the floor where her remains are buried. Sarah and David dig at the spot Eliza indicated and find her remains. They perform a simple ritual to lay her spirit to rest. As they finish, Eliza's ghost appears one last time, smiling gratefully before fading away. The air becomes warm and peaceful. With Eliza's spirit at rest, Silverwood Manor feels lighter and more welcoming. The whispers and footsteps stop. Sarah and David decide to stay and restore the manor, feeling a deep connection to its history and to Eliza.
Ravenwood Manor stands tall amidst the encroaching darkness, its imposing silhouette cutting a stark figure against the dimming sky. The Gothic architecture is veiled in shadows, with ivy snaking its way up the weathered walls like grasping fingers. A sense of foreboding hangs heavy in the air, hinting at the secrets that lie within. The gardens of Ravenwood Manor lie in disarray, their once manicured lawns now overrun with tangled foliage and gnarled trees. Moonlight filters through the twisted branches, casting eerie silhouettes upon the overgrown vegetation and adding to the unsettling atmosphere that permeates the grounds. The iron gates of Ravenwood Manor loom imposingly in the darkness, their once intricate designs now obscured by rust and neglect. Moonlight glints off the metal bars, casting eerie patterns upon the ground below and lending an air of desolation to the entrance of the estate. Inside Ravenwood Manor, the grand foyer is illuminated by flickering candlelight, casting long shadows across the marble floor. Dust motes dance in the air, stirred by a silence so profound it feels almost tangible, as if the very walls are holding their breath in anticipation of what is to come. In the dining hall of Ravenwood Manor, a long table is set for a macabre feast, its once opulent setting now shrouded in decay. Cobwebs hang from the chandeliers like tattered curtains, and the air is heavy with the musty scent of neglect, a grim reminder of the mansion's former glory days. Within Ravenwood Manor's library, dusty shelves groan under the weight of forgotten knowledge. Moonlight filters through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns upon the worn carpet. The air is thick with the smell of aging paper and the secrets contained within the ancient tomes that line the walls. In the ballroom of Ravenwood Manor, a grand chandelier hangs from the ceiling, its once glistening crystals now dull and lifeless. Moonlight filters through broken windows, casting eerie shadows upon the cracked dance floor. The room echoes with the ghostly laughter of revelries long past, a haunting reminder of the mansion's former glory. Within the study of Ravenwood Manor, dusty books and forgotten artifacts clutter every available surface. A single candle flickers on the desk, its feeble light casting eerie shadows upon the walls. Ghostly figures seem to dance in the darkness, their presence felt but never seen, adding to the sense of unease that permeates the room. In the bedroom of Ravenwood Manor, a canopy bed stands like a relic of a bygone era, its once luxurious linens now covered in dust and cobwebs. Moonlight filters through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows upon the peeling wallpaper. The room is frozen in time, a silent witness to the horrors that haunt its halls. As dawn breaks over Ravenwood Manor, the backyard is bathed in the soft light of a new day. The full extent of its decay is revealed in the morning light as mist rises from the damp earth and shrouds the crumbling structures in an ethereal glow. The horrors of the night retreat with the darkness, but the memory of their presence lingers like a shadow upon the land. In a small town nestled among the hills, a group of friends receives an invitation to spend a weekend at a secluded manor on the outskirts of town. Excited for a getaway, they eagerly accept, unaware of the darkness that lurks within the old estate. As they approach the imposing gates of the manor, a sense of unease washes over them, but they dismiss it as mere nerves. The friends enter the grand foyer of the manor, their footsteps echoing on the marble floors. Dust covers every surface, and cobwebs hang from the chandeliers overhead. Despite its faded grandeur, the manor exudes an air of mystery and intrigue. They exchange nervous glances, wondering what secrets lie hidden within its walls. As night falls, the friends gather for a dinner party in the grand dining hall. The table is set with fine china and silverware, but the food sits untouched, as if waiting for guests who will never arrive. As they dine, they can't shake the feeling of being watched, and strange noises echo through the empty halls. As the night wears on, the friends split up to explore the manor, each one drawn to a different part of the house by an unseen force. They wander the darkened corridors, their footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. Strange whispers fill the air, their words indistinct but undeniably menacing. As they explore, one of the friends encounters a ghostly apparition, a woman dressed in a flowing white gown, her hair cascading down her back in loose waves. She reaches out to them with ethereal hands, her eyes filled with longing and sadness. The friend staggers back in terror, their heart pounding in their chest. As the night progresses, the friends uncover dark secrets hidden within the manor's walls, a history of tragedy and betrayal that spans generations. They find old journals and letters, piecing together the story of the manor's past inhabitants. But as they delve deeper, they awaken something sinister that has been lying dormant for years. As the night wears on, the friends begin to unravel, their minds tormented by the malevolent forces that haunt the manor. They argue and accuse one another, their once strong bonds fraying under the weight of paranoia and fear. But as they spiral further into madness, they realize they must confront the darkness that lurks within the manor if they have any hope of escaping its grasp. Armed with determination, the friends set out to confront the evil that haunts the manor once and for all. They gather in the grand foyer, their hearts pounding in their chests as they prepare to face their greatest fears. With a final glance at one another, they steel themselves for the battle ahead. As dawn breaks, the friends emerge from the manor, battered and bruised but alive. They exchange weary smiles, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the scars of their ordeal will never fully heal, they take solace in the knowledge that they've conquered the darkness that once threatened to consume them.
4 friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lily, stood outside an old, abandoned house on a dare. The house was infamous in their town for being haunted, but they decided to spend the night there to prove their bravery. They pushed open the rusty gate and walked to the front door, which creaked loudly as they opened it. Inside, the house was dark and musty, with broken furniture and cobwebs everywhere. In the living room, they saw an old, dusty couch and a broken chandelier. Suddenly, a cold breeze blew through the room, making them shiver. They heard a faint whisper, but couldn't tell where it came from. They decided to explore upstairs. The wooden stairs creaked with every step. At the top, they found a long hallway with several closed doors. They heard a strange scratching sound coming from one of the rooms. They opened the door to the room and saw a rocking chair moving on its own. The temperature dropped suddenly, and they saw the faint outline of a ghostly figure in the corner. The figure whispered, "Leave this place." Panicking, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even colder and darker. They found strange symbols on the walls and old, dusty furniture. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure again, now clearer and more menacing. The ghost raised its hand, and the friends felt an icy wind pushing them towards the stairs. Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house, the door slamming shut behind them. They didn't stop running until they were far from the house. They vowed never to return, and to never speak of what they had seen.
In the fading light of evening, an eerie abandoned manor looms ominously. Its once grand facade is now dilapidated and covered in vines. Surrounding the mansion, overgrown weeds and dead trees seem to claw at the earth, adding to the sense of desolation. The windows, like vacant eyes, gaze out into the encroaching darkness. Within the manor's garden, nature has reclaimed its territory. Overgrown plants and twisted branches create a labyrinth of shadows. Moonlight struggles to penetrate the dense foliage, casting eerie shadows that seem to writhe and twist upon the cracked stone pathways. The entrance to the manor, once grand and imposing, now stands in ruins. Cracked pillars and a broken staircase lead to a doorway, obscured by darkness. Moonlight filters through the gaps, illuminating the dust particles that hang heavy in the stagnant air. Inside the manor, the foyer is shrouded in darkness, illuminated only by flickering candlelight. Eerie shadows dance on the peeling wallpaper, while dusty cobwebs hang from the ornate chandelier overhead. The air is thick with the scent of decay, as if the very walls are exhaling the secrets they hold. In the dining room, a long table sits abandoned, covered in a thick layer of dust and cobwebs. Moonlight filters through broken windows, casting eerie patterns on the decaying floorboards, as if the ghosts of past feasts still linger in the shadows. Within the library, dusty shelves groan under the weight of forgotten knowledge. Books with cracked and faded spines line the walls, their pages yellowed with age. Moonlight streams through stained glass windows, casting colorful shadows on the threadbare carpet, as if the spirits of literature themselves haunt the halls. In the bedroom, the bed frame sags under the weight of neglect, its once luxurious bedding now tattered and torn. Moonlight filters through broken windows, casting eerie shadows on the peeling wallpaper, as if the room itself is trapped in a nightmare. Deep within the bowels of the manor lies the basement, a place of darkness and decay. Rusted pipes line the walls, dripping with moisture, while moonlight filters weakly through a small window, casting eerie shadows on the damp concrete floor, as if the very walls themselves are whispering secrets. Outside, the manor's backyard is engulfed in a raging storm. Lightning splits the sky, illuminating the darkness with its blinding light, while thunder rumbles ominously in the distance. Rain lashes down, turning the earth to mud, as if the very heavens themselves are unleashing their fury upon the forsaken grounds. As dawn breaks, the manor grounds are bathed in the soft light of a new day. The full extent of their decay is revealed in the morning light, as mist rises from the damp earth, shrouding the fours.
Emily and her brother Jack inherit an old mansion from their estranged uncle. The house, nestled deep in the woods, is grand but eerily quiet. As they explore, Emily finds an old, ornate key in a dusty drawer. She keeps it, wondering what it might unlock. That night, Emily wakes up to the sound of whispers and faint footsteps. She dismisses it as her imagination. When she looks out the window, she sees a shadowy figure standing under a tree in the garden. She calls Jack, but the figure is gone when he arrives. The next day, Emily and Jack search for what the key might unlock. They find a hidden door behind a bookshelf in the study. The key fits perfectly, revealing a small room filled with old books, an antique mirror, and a diary. Emily reads the diary and learns it belonged to a woman named Margaret who lived in the mansion years ago. Margaret wrote about seeing a ghostly figure and hearing whispers. Her last entry hints at a hidden treasure in the house. That night, Emily sees the ghostly figure in the mirror. The figure, a woman in old-fashioned clothing, looks sad and mouths the words, "Help me." Terrified, Emily tells Jack, who becomes determined to help her. Emily and Jack search the house for clues about Margaret's hidden treasure. They find a series of letters behind a loose brick in the fireplace. The letters reveal that Margaret's child was taken from her, and she hid a valuable locket somewhere in the house to protect it. As they continue their search, the ghost becomes more active, appearing more frequently and growing more desperate. Emily and Jack follow clues to the attic, where they find a locked chest. The key fits perfectly. Inside the chest, they find Margaret's locket, along with a letter explaining her tragic story. Margaret's spirit appears, looking peaceful. She thanks them silently before fading away, her spirit finally at rest. With Margaret's spirit at rest, the house feels lighter. The whispers and apparitions stop. Emily and Jack decide to stay and restore the mansion, feeling a connection to its history and to Margaret. Months later, Emily and Jack enjoy their peaceful home. They often think about Margaret and the extraordinary events that brought them closer together. The mansion is no longer haunted, but the memories of the past live on in a peaceful way. In a secluded forest, shrouded in mist and mystery, stood an old mansion, long abandoned and forgotten by time. Its towering facade loomed ominously over the surrounding trees, its windows dark and empty. Despite the warnings of locals, a group of friends decided to explore the mansion, drawn by the allure of its haunted reputation. The group consisted of 4 friends: Alex, Sarah, Mike, and Emily. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, they approached the mansion, their footsteps echoing in the silence of the forest. Alex, the leader of the group, was determined to uncover the mansion's secrets, while Sarah and Emily exchanged nervous glances, and Mike tried to mask his fear with bravado. Inside the mansion, the air was heavy with dust and decay. Cobwebs adorned the ceilings, and the floorboards creaked ominously underfoot. As they explored the dimly lit halls, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and strange whispers seemed to echo through the empty rooms. As they delved deeper into the mansion, the whispers grew louder, and the shadows seemed to twist and contort in the flickering light. Suddenly, they stumbled upon a room filled with strange artifacts and arcane symbols. A sense of dread washed over them as they realized they had stumbled upon something ancient and malevolent. Suddenly, a chilling wind swept through the room, extinguishing their flashlights and plunging them into darkness. Panic set in as they heard unearthly whispers and felt cold fingers brush against their skin. Frozen with fear, they realized they were not alone in the mansion. The shadows themselves were alive and hungry for their souls. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends fled from the mansion, their screams echoing through the halls. The shadows pursued them relentlessly, twisting and contorting in their wake. Bursting through the front door, they stumbled into the forest, gasping for breath as they prayed for escape from the nightmare. As they caught their breath, the friends knew they had escaped the mansion's clutches. But the memory of their terrifying ordeal would haunt them forever. As they made their way back to civilization, they vowed never to speak of their experience, lest the shadows find them once more and drag them back into the darkness.
Ravenswood House had a reputation for being the most haunted place in the small town of Millfield. On a misty autumn evening, Emma, a curious journalist, arrived to investigate the legends surrounding the mansion. She parked her car at the gate, shivering from the cold and the eerie atmosphere. The mansion loomed in the distance, its windows like dark, watchful eyes. Emma pushed open the creaky wooden door of Ravenswood House. Inside, the air was cold and stale. Dust covered every surface and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but decayed foyer. Her footsteps echoed as she ventured further inside, the silence pressing in on her. As Emma explored the mansion, she felt a sudden chill. Turning a corner, she saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving her heart pounding. Determined to uncover more, she made her way to the library, hoping to find records of the mansion's dark past. In the library, Emma found rows of dusty old books. As she searched through them, she heard whispers and the sound of pages turning by themselves. She discovered an old diary belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lady Ravenswood. The entry spoke of dark rituals and a curse that had been placed on the house and its inhabitants. Emma's exploration led her to a room filled with mirrors. As she walked through, her reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following her with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular caught her attention. In it, she saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. Emma reached out to touch the mirror, but the image vanished. Emma discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. She descended the creaky stairs into a dark, musty basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old dusty books scattered on a table. She found a journal detailing the dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by Lady Ravenswood. As Emma read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lady Ravenswood appeared, her face twisted with rage. She pointed at Emma and screamed, "You should not have come here." The walls shook, and the air filled with a chilling wind. Emma knew she had to leave immediately. Emma bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind her. She raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on her. She burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but she could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on her. Back in her apartment, Emma reviewed the photos and notes she had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the dark history of Ravenswood House. As she finished, she felt a cold draft and heard Lady Ravenswood's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." Emma knew the haunting was far from over.
Evelyn and her friends, Mark, Lisa, and John, stood at the edge of the dense forest, staring at the looming structure of Blackwood Mansion. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out and grab at their feet. The mansion, abandoned for decades, had an eerie aura that made them shiver despite the warm summer evening. "I can't believe we are actually doing this," Lisa muttered, her voice trembling. "It's just for one night," Mark reassured her, though he didn't sound convinced. "We spend the night, prove the ghost stories wrong, and then leave." John, the skeptic of the group, laughed. "Ghosts aren't real. You'll see." Evelyn, the leader of the group, took a deep breath and stepped forward, pushing open the creaking iron gate. "Let's go." Inside the mansion, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. The wooden floorboards creaked under their feet as they explored the dimly lit corridors. Each room they entered seemed more decayed than the last, with peeling wallpaper and broken furniture strewn about. "Look at this," John called from one of the rooms. He held up an old photograph of a family, their faces blurred with age. "This must be the original owners." Evelyn shivered. "There's something unsettling about this place." Mark found an old journal on a dusty bookshelf. "Maybe this will tell us more about what happened here." As the night wore on, strange things began to happen. Lights flickered even though the mansion had no electricity. The sound of footsteps echoed through the halls, though no one was there. Whispers seemed to come from the walls themselves. Lisa clung to Mark. "Did you hear that?" "It's just the wind," John said, though his voice was unsteady. Evelyn held the journal tightly, her eyes scanning the pages. "There's something here. Something about a curse." A loud crash echoed from the hallway, and they all jumped. Mark grabbed a flashlight and led the way, finding a broken mirror on the floor, though no one had touched it. Evelyn's hands trembled as she turned the pages of the journal. "It says here that the family who lived here dabbled in dark magic. They summoned something they couldn't control." Mark's eyes widened. "What did they summon?" "A spirit of vengeance," Evelyn whispered. "It's trapped here, and it feeds on fear." John scoffed, but his face was pale. "This is ridiculous. There are no such things as spirits." Lisa pointed to the mirror. "Then how do you explain that?" Before John could answer, the temperature in the room dropped suddenly. Their breath fogged in the air, and a low growl resonated from the shadows. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, its eyes glowing red. The friends backed away, their fear palpable. The figure seemed to grow stronger, feeding on their terror. "Stay together!" Evelyn shouted, her voice breaking. John tried to act brave, stepping forward. "Leave us alone." The spirit lashed out, sending John crashing into a wall. Lisa screamed, and Mark pulled her back, trying to protect her. Evelyn held up the journal like a shield. "There's a way to banish it. We just have to find it." Evelyn frantically flipped through the journal, looking for the banishment ritual. "We need to find the symbols and say the words." Mark and Lisa barricaded the door, trying to buy them time. The spirit pounded against it, its growls growing louder. "Found it!" Evelyn cried, showing the page to the others. "Let's do this," Mark said, determination in his eyes. They quickly gathered the materials described in the journal, creating a circle of protection. Evelyn began to chant the words, her voice steady despite the fear. The spirit broke through the door just as Evelyn finished the chant. It roared in fury, but the circle of protection glowed, holding it at bay. "Keep chanting!" Evelyn yelled, her voice filled with authority. The spirit thrashed against the barrier, but it couldn't break through. Slowly, it began to weaken, its form dissolving into the air. With one final, deafening scream, the spirit vanished. The mansion fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. "We did it," Mark said, his voice filled with relief. The friends stumbled out of the mansion, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. They were exhausted, but relieved to be alive. "Let's never do that again," Lisa said, managing a weak smile. Evelyn held up the journal, now closed. "We should make sure no one else ever tries." John nodded. "Agreed. This place should stay forgotten." They walked away, the mansion behind them now just a shadow against the rising sun. Evelyn, Mark, Lisa, and John arrived at Crescent Grove, a forgotten village nestled deep in the forest. The sun was setting, casting eerie shadows on the abandoned buildings. The village was said to be haunted, and the four friends had come to investigate the rumors. "This place gives me the creeps," Lisa whispered, clutching Mark's arm. "Don't worry, it's just for one night," Mark reassured her. Evelyn led the group, her curiosity piqued by the mystery. "Let's find a place to set up camp." John the skeptic laughed. "Ghosts aren't real, you'll see." They found an old inn at the center of the village and decided to make it their base for the night. The building was dusty and filled with cobwebs. As they set up their sleeping bags in the main hall, strange noises echoed through the empty corridors. "Did you hear that?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling. "It's just the wind," John replied, though he didn't sound convinced. Evelyn found an old diary on a shelf. "This might tell us what happened here," she said, opening it. As Evelyn read from the diary, the friends learned about the village's dark past. The villagers had practiced forbidden rituals, summoning a malevolent spirit that eventually destroyed them. "This is creepy," Mark said, glancing around nervously. "We should leave," Lisa urged, fear in her eyes. "We need to stay and finish this," Evelyn insisted. "We have to find out if the spirit is still here." Suddenly, the air grew cold and the lights flickered. A shadowy figure appeared at the end of the hall, its eyes glowing with a sinister red light. The friends froze in terror. "Run!" Mark shouted, but the figure moved faster, blocking their exit. Evelyn held up the diary like a shield. "We need to use the ritual described here to banish it." The spirit lashed out, knocking John to the ground. Lisa screamed and Mark pulled her back, trying to protect her. With trembling hands, Evelyn and Mark gathered the materials needed for the ritual described in the diary. Lisa and John tried to hold the spirit at bay, their fear palpable. "Hurry up!" Lisa cried as the spirit advanced. "We're almost ready," Evelyn said, her voice shaking. "Mark, light the candles." Mark lit the candles, forming a protective circle. Evelyn began to chant the incantation from the diary, her voice growing stronger with each word. The spirit roared in fury, trying to break through the protective circle. Evelyn continued to chant, her voice now steady and commanding. The air crackled with energy as the spirit's form began to waver. "Keep going," Mark urged, holding Lisa close. John, recovering from the spirit's attack, joined in the chant. The spirit let out a deafening scream as it was forced back. With one final word, Evelyn completed the ritual. The spirit dissolved into the air, leaving a deafening silence behind. The friends collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a peaceful silence. "We did it," Evelyn said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's get out of here," Lisa urged, her eyes still wide with fear. They gathered their things and left the inn, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. As they walked away from Crescent Grove, they felt a sense of triumph and relief. "Let's never do this again," John said, managing a weak smile. As they walked away from the village, the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the forest. The village behind them was now just a distant memory, a place they would never forget but never return to. "Let's make a pact," Evelyn said, stopping to look at her friends. "We never speak of this again." "Agreed," Mark, Lisa, and John said in unison. They walked on, the past behind them and the future ahead, grateful to have survived the haunting of Crescent Grove.